MEP Axel Voss, thank you so much for your time and joining me on the AI6 podcast.
Yes, thank you for your invitation and your interest.
Well, yes, I saw your press release, and as somebody who is interested in artificial intelligence, also involved in educating people, and as a writer myself, I thought this was definitely a conversation worth happening. So, just explain to the listeners and to the viewers what you are trying to achieve when it comes to generative AI and the protection of copyright of creators.
So the long version is that we have changed the copyright law in 2019, and there we have had an article where we are describing text and data mining, and that this is an exception for that you do not have to pay for something. And now, at the end of 2022, large language models has been developed and took all or crawled through all the content and took them all on board. And although this has been protected content, and that's why we need now to come to a balanced situation between these large language models or the way AI is dealing with copyright protected works and trying to balance these, that all these artists, authors, performers will have or can get a kind of a remuneration out of it, because these large language models sometimes also creating a business model on the content of the protected or not remunerated content, and this is also a kind of a competitive model sometimes. That's why we think we need to balance these, that creators need also a fair remuneration.
And it's very difficult for a creator to protect their work. They may not have the wherewithal to actually do that. Can you foresee a way where it will be obvious or accessible for creators if this law is changed, for them to know that their work has been trained by a model and they deserve that remuneration?
Yeah, the problem now is with all these large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Llama, Grok, and so on. You or nobody knows what the data fundament of those models are, and therefore you can't really enforce your rights any longer. So you don't know if you have written something or if you have created a song, if this is part of this large language model or not. And therefore, to enforce those rights, we need a kind of a balance. But what we are doing is now to remind them also to all these principles of copyright. They are still existing, and nobody is saying that they do not, or that they should respect also these principles, although they have created with new technology something out of it. So this is what we are trying to find a way that we are obliging them in respecting the principles of copyright, but also trying to think about in a machine readable way how they can still crawl or develop a large language model, but detecting what might be remunerated or what not.
And then after detection, and if creators deserve that remuneration, talk to me about the licensing model that you're considering or suggesting.
Yeah. So at first, coming to this idea in trying to simplify licensing, at first we are saying licensing is a fundamental principle if you would like to use this content. And then in a second step, we are trying to meet this idea, and we are trying to simplify licensing if you would like to develop a new technological format like this. So that's why we thought about either we have a kind of a standardized stop signal, what you're putting on your homepage or at the copyright protected work, and saying you have to respect, you can't crawl this one without remuneration. Or secondly, and this is an idea where you have a kind, let's say, central list or register or whatever it is, if you are not having the capabilities in protecting your works online, that you are giving a kind of, that you register at this list and saying you have to respect that these content with these kind of homepage and so on, you can't crawl without asking. So to deliver two options for the creators in protecting their works, and also the machine readable possibility in saying if you would like to have it, then come to a fair remuneration. And you can do this machine readable. The bigger ones will, of course, probably negotiate directly with this large language model, but not every single artist will come to this point. And that's why we need to think about how this can be managed. And we need, everyone should be aware that from my point of view, I would say this is the race for the biggest. So if you can't offer to these models a lot of data, then you are probably not interesting for these models. But if you have a lot of data in offering, then you might be successful in a good and fair remuneration. That's why what we also should have in mind, there are bigger ones, but there are also smaller ones, and they do not have this bargaining power. But how we can create this bargaining power also for the smaller ones to meet on eye level with these global machines.
So are you saying that the responsibility should be on these AI companies with large language models to seek permissions or to offer remuneration? Because we know that very often these major tech companies flout the laws and pay the fines, and things don't change.
Yes, you're totally right. We are trying in a first step to make visible what is possible and what is not possible. And in the second step, that they then also need to license and to come to agreements. Here, of course, this element of bargaining powers play a role. And that's why we should try to balance the situation for everyone in a perfect way.
And do you see that extending to the world of traditional media and journalism? Like already we see that Google is creating AI overviews, so there's no need often for us to click into the news websites of mainstream media, and they commercialize their content, right?
Now, here you are touching upon a kind of a very important question, because media and press publishers and so on, they are playing a certain important role for democracies. And if they are losing their business models somehow, then all of a sudden you do not have diversity and pluralism any longer in this area of publications or public opinions. So that's why we are focusing on these a bit more deepen. And here, of course, we are also mentioning the possibilities of collective licensing possibilities. Otherwise, we do not see that these large language models, they might not be interested in 150 times the same content. And that's why they are concentrating on the bigger ones. But here, because of sustaining the diversity and pluralism, we need also to have a kind of an option for smaller ones. So, and that's why we are trying to have an obligation for them to name the source and also to make or to provide a link, that there is an opportunity. But this can't be alone everything in measures to protect at the end press publishers and broadcasters and so on. Here we need probably to focus a bit more on it to make sure that because of large language models, all of a sudden the other information business models are still there. So this is important for democracy in all.
Now, the EU AI Act and any amendments or additions to that is widely seen globally as the most strictest and stringent legislation when it comes to artificial intelligence. And we've seen the digital omnibus and coming out of the EU and somewhat of a rollback or a relaxing of rules to help spur innovation. But do you think the major players, who are mainly from the US and China, if this is made legislation, are going to play ball? Are they going to respect EU laws when these companies, yes, have European headquarters, for example, in Ireland, but they're operating, they're born in America and China?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do? How do you foresee this aligning?
So, of course, at first, we need to have in mind that copyright needs to be more harmonized on a European level, especially in this regard. What we have done also in 2019 with the social media situation at that time. What we also should have in mind that the normal territorial principle is or can't stay in the same way. Here we need to say very clearly that if they would like to provide their services in a European single market, then they should also remunerate and license and so on. And if this is not the case, if they are training their models somewhere else without European licensing, then we need to say to them, I'm sorry, but so you can't enter our market. Here we need to be very strict, otherwise this will be circumvented if they are going to third countries and training the models and providing them to the European market without any remuneration. This is then circumventing what we have in mind. So this is what we can't allow. And so far what I'm seeing, these large language models or the providers are already interested also in licensing, not all of them and not in a dimension probably we would like to see. But we should make very clear, and we are very serious about this, we can't just give every European content away and the added value is then done somewhere else. This is what we do not want. And I hope this then will be respected. But we need a practical way for both sides. And I hope we are coming to this point.
So how far are you on the journey of making this EU law? What step is it now and what steps are left to go?
So we have finished our so-called initiative report in the European Parliament, where we made totally clear that this is not the way how we would like to see it. What is now happening, so what we are like to achieve is that we are triggering the Commission, the European Commission now in coming up with a proposal in solving this problem. Some member states have already also in the council approached this issue, and a lot of them said, no, we need to solve this problem. So there's from both sides of the co-legislators already an indication towards the Commission they should solve the problem. And let's cross fingers that they are coming up this year or at least next year with a kind of a proposal. Of course, then we will again deeply discuss how we can solve this question of balancing this in a global machine-readable world. And then let's cross fingers that we are coming to an end at the end of the mandate.
Yeah, and you know what? Everything goes slow in the European institutions.
Yes, I know.
Compared to how fast artificial intelligence is evolving. So if I think about the end of this mandate and where AI is going to be in like 3 years' time, it is the world will be run by agents and not as many humans. It's, you know, we really are living in an imperfect scenario here, aren't we? And it's very difficult to fix this really big problem.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with what you have said. That's why we are urgently asking the Commission in trying to come up with a solution. It is not easy, but if there is a will also, then we can find a way, and there might be also a kind of a better solution with technical or technological solutions or ways forward. But here we need to be courageous in saying this is a frame, please respect our values and how we would like to see it. And if not, then we might ask in leaving our market.
And, you know, really the EU has shown great leadership in promoting by words, but also by actions in terms of regulation, that you want to create a world where it's AI for good and in the public interest. So I have to say that the EU is the loudest voice. I've been to the US and in many rooms with people, and it's a common conversation. But if this was to be adopted, you know, by the end of the mandate, what would it look like for you as a better scenario for creators? What is your hope?
So I'm more than less hoping that we are coming to this system where we have at first, in the interest of the large language model developers, that we are coming to a more easy way in reading what is protected and what is not. So you will find on every homepage a kind of a picture what is copyright protected. But if you're not protecting these actively, they can use it. This is the one hand side. On the other hand side, we would like to have also then this fair remuneration in an also transparency way, that you can't also enforce your rights if they are just saying, oh, no, I haven't used your content, but you need to find a way how to control and to enforce it. So that we are achieving also something like this. And what is, from my point of view, extremely important is that we are finding a way in a machine-readable format, because they are not able to deal with every single creator, so that there is a kind of a possibility, and also that the collective management organizations might play a role. I would love to see, but here probably this I won't have majorities for it, that we are coming more and more to the situation to have a kind of a single point in Europe for dealing with all these licensing. But at this stage, probably nobody is really interested. The member states will say, oh, no, this is our competence and we do not want to go that far. Secondly, all the associations in the creative sector are probably also not interested to give up some of their businesses and so on. But if you really want to play a role in these, in this remuneration and licensing, then you need to offer a lot of data, and then you can be part of it. And but therefore, we should frame these in a way that a lot of people have possibilities in accessing and trying to get remuneration. That we have a model for these that everyone will be satisfied. At the end, of course, press publishers, broadcasters needs to be also protected, that they can still do their job for our all interest in upholding good press publishing seriously, and also with a business model what they give them the interest of going on and on and on.
Well, this is certainly one story to watch, because it's not over now. But thank you for putting forward the case of the creator and the artist at a European level. And thank you so much for joining me on the show, MEP Voss.
Yeah, you're welcome.